What has remained true though through these years is the like how important it is to do engineering and doing it well. Like some of the things hasn't changed through these times, How do you make systems reliable? How do you scale the systems? How do you make sure that your systems are hitting the SLAs that they are promising to our customers? What has happened is cloud computing has now become the base fundamental for building AI.
Welcome to the Feria TechCast, where we'll bring you all things science, engineering, technology, and innovation. Today, we are joined by Priyanshu Jha, a senior engineering manager at Atlassian, with over 12 years of experience building AI-powered, secure, and enterprise-scale systems. He has held key roles at Amazon, Microsoft, and now Atlassian, leading engineering teams that have shaped products used by millions worldwide. At Microsoft, he led the creation of the Incident Management Copilot and served as tech lead for Microsoft Purview during enterprise driving security and compliance innovations. At Amazon, he was part of the founding team behind Amazon RODX proxy, now widely used across industries. Priyanshu also holds two patents in cloud security and sovereign environments. Beyond technology, he deeply cares about empathy-based people management, mentoring the next generation of engineers, and advancing the responsible use of AI. Priyanshu, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ezekiel, for the introduction.
Uh, Great. So you've had a front row seat to massive shifts in tech. So from the cloud revolution at Amazon to the AI race at Microsoft and Atlassian. So tell us, what is the most important lesson that has remained true across all these transformations?
Sure. I think that's a great question. So, when I joined the industry, so this is back in like 2010s, when I joined the industry, AWS had just sort of burst into the scene, and industry as a whole was basically moving on to cloud computing. Azure came out, GCP came out. There were a bunch of other cloud providers that came out with their own offerings. And that was all the rage. Like I remember sort of in 2012 and 13 thinking about like, how could like universities, if you went, they were basically they were saying, how can we make you a better cloud engineer, and that was basically emphasis of a lot of like big organizations at the time, where they were like, what can we do to basically give our own cloud offering, and like SaaS cloud offerings, PaaS cloud offerings. A lot of these were like bursting onto the scene. I was, lucky to be there at that time, and I built my muscle in sort of cloud computing. AI and ML were at that time in their nascent phases, and through like 2010s, so I'm talking like 2015, 2016, there were a lot of advancement in ML techniques. I think neural nets was something that came out, recommender systems became better, but all of these were being supported with like cloud computing. The cost of building a data center um, was going down slowly, and I think the tipping point came around say 2020s, where it became ubiquitous. Like offering cloud computing wasn't a thing that was seen as a edge anymore. Like all of the companies or most of the companies were offering some sort of an platform for cloud, and most consumer companies had also moved on to like either cloud computing or even managing their own data centers, which were sort of like their own private clouds. At that time in 2020s, I think, is when the LLM revolution came. Like this, to be precise, in 2022, but even there was a headwind before like 2022, where there were advancements happening in the background. So LLMs or ChatGPT coming out in 2022 was, it was a surprise for the rest of the world, but in terms of like the tech landscape and people who had been tracking like machine learning, recommender systems, and in general AI, they were not surprised because you hadn't just got there by chance. There had been a lot of different models. Da Vinci, which there used to be a model called Da Vinci, which was in 2021, which had also done a lot of advancements. So in 2022, LLMs burst onto the scene uh, and became part of like the general conversation where we were like, starting to talk about AGI, and the winds just shifted. This was the new sort of the cool thing that everyone wanted to latch on. ChatGPT came out, and if you just look at like, I think a great piece of data is look at what companies were getting funding from investors. And if you basically compare from between like 2013 to say 2023, you'll see the shift, right? A lot of investors were pouring money into companies that wanted to do cloud computing versus the companies that wanted to do AI in 2023. So that was basically the shift that happened in the industry. What has remained true though through these years is the like how important it is to do engineering and doing it well. Like some of the things hasn't changed through these times. How do you make systems reliable? How do you scale the systems? How do you make sure that your systems are hitting the SLAs that they are promising to our customers? What has happened is cloud computing has now become the base fundamental for building AI. And now the companies, a lot of these companies like GCP, Azure, AWS, the top three big players basically in the cloud space, they are basically offering cloud which are basically tailored towards AI landscape. As engineers, you are still supposed to keep your fundamentals in place when building AI systems, like the software engineering part of it, which is like, how do you build reliable systems? How do you build scalable systems and systems that can basically, that can handle workloads coming from customers? That has remained the same. And that is how I think a lot of people who were sort of in the industry for a long time have been able to transition and still stay relevant through AI. So yeah, I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, great response there, Priyanshu. So, you've led the creation of the incident management copilot at Microsoft, and we are part of the founding team for Amazon RDS proxy. So, these are products used by millions. So, I'd like to ask, what does the day one process look like for building something that needs to be enterprise skill and secure from the outset?
Yeah. Let me dive a little bit into this. So these two offerings that I sort of was got a front seat in terms of like building them and getting in hands of customers are very sort of two very different products. So IDS Proxy is basically a cloud computing product offering like infrastructure to users or to AWS users, and that's basically sits in the background. Whereas the incident management copilot is a consumer facing system which is basically used inside Microsoft for incident management. And but it's basically, and the difference is that RDS proxy is basically an infrastructure as a service, whereas the incident management copilot is basically a SaaS, which is like a software as a service. So these were two very different things in terms of like what they were doing. In terms of like what's common between them is like we wanted to make sure that these systems are able to scale up where from from like right from the outset, it's like how do you build system which is able to cater to a wide user base in terms of like what they need and have maximum impact in those areas. And so that is the sort of like you basically find a problem space, and then these are the things you optimize for. um you basically go ahead and you set some key metrics in terms of like what are those metrics that we are going to measure for finding out the success of these systems. And there is a lot of similarity there. Like in terms of incident management copilot or RDS proxy, you'd make sure that the systems are available, the systems are secure, where people are not going to use it for doing intrusion. So there's like intrusion detection built in, and there's like there's support against like making sure that DDoS attacks can't happen on the systems. Like, what if a bot goes in and basically floods your incident management copilot with queries, like what should happen? So you build like guardrails around it. Same for like RDS proxy. Like if a bot goes and starts spinning up these RDS proxy instances, how do you make sure that the system stays available and reliable? So those are sort of the kind of things that you start off with, and those are the considerations you take day one, before even diving into like the actual designs of it. You start off with some of these very basic fundamentals and sort of build on top of it.
Oh, that was very insightful. So, let's talk about something different in this case, uh, empathy-based leadership. So, can you share a specific story where choosing empathy over pure technical rigor led to a better outcome for a team and the product?
Absolutely. It is something that is very close to my heart. And, that I've built empathy based leadership as part of like my management brand. So I will basically recall one of the instance where one of the reports I had, they had taken a medical leave for a long time. So I'm talking like, more than couple of years, or even more, I think maybe 3 years. And the company I was at, so I'm going to protect like sort of their privacy. So I'm not going to talk about which of these companies it was. But the company had a great policy around it, where people can take medical leaves for a long time, still come back and resume their roles. Before they left, I think they were sort of a mid-level engineer, and their career trajectory was pretty good. So they were doing a good job overall in terms of like how they were growing in their careers. And they took like 2.5 to 3 years worth of time off, and they came back and were able to resume in their job. The problem that happened was that during this time, I think there had been advancements in terms of like the tooling that is used, or some of the work, like the way that we work, or we as a team or had evolved. The product was a completely new landscape, and now there was this person that was coming who hadn't coded for like 3 years or 2.5 to 3 years, and being sort of thrust onto into this big company as like a mid-level engineer. Their first 3 to 4 months was very rough, in terms of if I was to basically put it in terms of like bluntly, like were they meeting expectations for their role? The answer to that is a no. They weren't meeting expectations for their role when looking at it from like a mid-level engineer, what they should be able to accomplish. And the reason behind that was very clear. At that time, I think, of course, performance conversations happen, and I basically started to have conversation with them around like what's holding you back, like um, what is your plan. And I saw this sort of fire on inside them, where they were like, they did recognize things that you know that were going wrong, and they were motivated to work through it, but they needed time for it, because these things don't happen in a day or even a week. They take months to get better at. They wanted to do well, and they wanted to get ahead and make sure that they are meeting expectations for the role, but it was just a challenging time. At that moment, as a manager, I basically have two choices. I can either choose to basically do a performance improvement plan on them, and basically have which is, there's a high chance that they might not be able to pass that, and then at that point we separate with them. Or I can basically give them a longer rope, like advocate for them at the leadership level, and say that I do believe in them, that they will course correct, and this is basically happening because they have had a long break. And in this case, I basically decided to give that person more grace, more time, and actually see that if they are able to, give them more bandwidth to express themselves and get to the level that they wanted to. So I did that, and in like 3 to 4 months, they did start performing at the level that they were. And actually, a year after that, I was able to I was able to help them support in their promotion to the next level as a senior engineer. And I think that is a great example of empathy based leadership for me. At that junction, as a manager, I could have chosen not to show empathy and, be more ruthless about it, to say that, if you're not performing, you are not going to be on my team, or choose to invest in that person, coach them, like let them grow and support them through that journey. So that taught me a lot about, like, leadership in general, and like how empathy based leadership helps. And I have basically incorporated that into my own managerial journey. Yeah.
Like fantastic. So, for the engineers and tech leads, what does it practically mean to create an environment where people can operate at, say, 1.2x or 1.5x? So, what's one small change a team can make to start fostering this?
Yeah, this basically goes into the kind of team that you're building, you know like um there is a term called, or a myth called, 10x engineers. These are engineers which has great impact. I believe in building teams with a lot of 1.5x engineers, rather than, one single 10x and multiple other 10x or below those. I think this basically goes into the team culture, where are you building a team that loves collaborating, and that basically comes from the manager or the leadership basically emphasizing that collaboration is looked upon in a positive light, and that you collaborating is basically seen as your contribution. So I basically, like, if you are building a team where there is a collaborative atmosphere, people are willing to support each other, and people are vocal about things without the fear of retribution. Like, think about, if a design is not great, you can go ahead and provide critical feedback without being rude and respectful, and, basically help that person grow. That can only happen in a culture of no fear, where, if, like, if the team has a culture where people are vocal about each other, not like in a bad sense, but in a growth mindset sense, where it's like, oh, this design looks great, but why don't you also think about this, versus, oh, your design is really poor, yeah, I don't think you have done a good job. So those are two very different. It's the same messaging, but in two very different ways. The first one is very supportive, so you're building a supportive collaborative culture, versus, like, in the second one, you are building a, people are being vocal, but they are basically not helping the other individual. So as long as you're able to build that, that's where I think 1.2 or 1.5 engineers come, where that one basically is you doing your work, and that the rest multiplier is coming from other people collaborating in a positive way, and basically helping you deliver that extra impact and extra value. So yeah, I think it's really important for leadership in these cases to go ahead and build these. And yeah, that I take pride in building teams which are, high performing teams with high performing individuals who support each other, collaborate with each other, and are never afraid to speak their mind.
So, moving on, Priyanshu, you hold patents in cloud security. So, from your vantage point, what's the most underestimated security challenge that most companies will face as AI becomes more integrated into everything?
Right, I think that's a great question. So what's been happening so far is companies have been trying to get ahead of attackers. It's as simple as that. So companies have been trying to, like, attackers have been trying to be creative in the sort of attacks they create, and to get through the security safeguards that the companies have built. And companies have been basically trying to stop that. A lot of this used to happen with like DDoS attacks, phishing, and a lot of like other things that the companies were doing in the past, or the attackers were doing in the past, like, phishing attempts, doing DDoSing and whatnot. And companies would basically build guardrails around it and try to fight it off. Increasingly, I think security has become a bigger threat with LLMs coming, with AI basically coming in. Now you have unlimited computing power, um, or a very large computing power available for very cheap through cloud computing. You have easily available LLM models like DeepSeek, which are basically like, available for very cheap or almost free. When you combine these two, you are now talking about a super intelligent human attacker, basically, that you will be able to build. So combining the unlimited power of cloud computing with like the LLMs and AI, you now have this super intelligent attacker, which basically acts like human. And that basically creates a myriad of challenges for the companies to follow. Like, how do you sort of protect against these? Like, how do you build tooling around making sure that you are able to detect and prevent attacks happening from these super intelligent bots, so to speak. And that is a challenge I think a lot of companies, including like Microsoft and Amazon, are facing, where they are basically building safeguards directly into like the infrastructure of it. Like, how do you make sure that the models are basically abiding by ethics and regulations, or the infrastructure that you're providing is not being used for malicious intent? It has to be done at that level, because that they are the enablers. The underlying infrastructure is the enabler of attacks. So how do you basically build safeguards at that level, other than actually also building prevention mechanism and intrusion detection mechanism at like the org level? So combining all these three is how companies are basically approaching security. It has become a much bigger challenge. Like, security in the age of AI is a very hard problem to solve, and companies are doing their best to get ahead here. Yeah.
Great. So, I'd like to ask you a personal one. So, how has using AI tools actually boosted your own productivity? Also, can you give our audience one practical, actionable example that they could try this week?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think after the advent of ChatGPT, like I was of course like intrigued by it, not just as like a technical engineer, but also as a consumer. Like, I was fascinated by it in terms of like how easy it has now become to sort of chat and get a human like response from a bot. Some of the things that has really helped me is it has cut down on a lot of time that I spent doing things like, finding flights for, like, if I'm planning on taking a vacation, finding flights, which are like the cheapest for my dates, or for like looking at like creating an itinerary of the places that I should visit, or even like proofreading some of the things that I have written. If I'm writing something, how do you help me like polish and proofread some of it? And those are some of the things that I basically do on a day to day basis. Like, a lot of times I am like, if I'm writing something for my personal use or even in professional use, we have our professional, like at work we have our own chatbots. Like at Microsoft it was M365 Copilot. At Atlassian we use Rovo. And that really helps with like finding information, making information much more easy. Like, what used to be like talking to 10 people to find out how to do this, you can basically ask these chatbots, and they would be able to like curate and provide you with an answer that that was not possible before. I do that on a daily basis. And I think if there was that one workflow that I would ask people to really check out is the ChatGPT agents. Like go like if you for your next trip, go and plan and tell tell the ChatGPT agent that these are my dates. I'm flexible with these dates. Find me the um, best flight combination that's the cheapest, and let it work. Like it's like I love I love how ChatGPT agents work and how they are able to do these trivial tasks and save a ton of time, because I used to spend hours on this, and it has become much easier. That's like a direct productivity boost that I'm getting from LLMs on like a fairly frequent basis.
Wonderful. So, looking at the next 2 to 3 years, so what's one trend in AI that you believe is currently flying under the radar and will soon become hugely important?
I think that we have not seen enough usage of AI in fintech, specifically like around, say, stock trading or like those sort of a things. I think I was going through a paper or reading through a paper where I think LLMs are still not there, where they are able to like predict reliably about like stock movements and things like that. I think that is one area that AI is still not great at. And I think there is a method to the madness of like how stocks go up or down, and that still hasn't been figured out by AI. With time and with more data, I think we are going to see more and more AI coming into this area, helping out with like investments and overall outperforming what your normal financial planner could do. So I think that is one area. So like consumer based fintech is one area that I think is currently underutilized when thinking from an AI perspective, and something where I think AI can do wonders in future. uh, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So, for someone in their early career who wants to become the kind of leader you described, so what's the first skill they should focus on developing beyond their technical abilities?
I think it's great to observe leaders at the start, like people who are in early career. You should observe leaders and see like what matters to them in terms of like what are the key data points they consider when making a decision. I think that is a great learning to have as you grow in your career. Like what is that data point that leaders act upon? Finding those data points and like just recognizing those data points on what like leaders act upon is a great exercise. And when that time comes, like as you grow in your career and you get into leadership, you'll basically realize it's a skill set that you have to build. And as you build that skill set, when you get into leadership, you feel more comfortable, or you don't if you haven't built that skill set over the years. I think one thing I did was like as I was growing in my career was to basically look at leaders to figure out like what are the key performance indicators they look for, like what are the key data points they consider before making a decision. How do they sort of roadmap things? What is that hunch that they act upon? As you are like understanding those, you sort of build your own gut check and your own framework that really helps when you get into leadership. Um so yeah, like start looking around, look at your leaders, figure out like what are those data points that can help you, that they basically act upon, and uh build a framework around it.
Wonderful. So, what has been the most rewarding part of helping to build products that millions, if not billions, of people rely on daily?
It's, of course, I think as an engineer, I get satisfaction out of the impact that it is having on lives. And yeah, I just for an example, like the RDS proxy that we built is used by millions of organizations. A lot of healthcare organizations use it. So in a sense, I do get that satisfaction that I built something that is helping, healthcare organizations deliver better healthcare to their patients. Or in case of like, at Microsoft, where I built like incident management, we were basically helping reduce mean time to mitigate for incidents. What that means is basically letting Microsoft deliver on its SLAs. And like Microsoft has millions of customers across, a lot of them in critical industries. So a Microsoft system going down is basically an impact to them, and ultimately our tooling was helping making sure that the systems remain operational for the most amount of time. So that is sort of the chain of impact that my work is having, and that's what I take the most satisfaction in as a human, and as an engineer. uh, so yeah, that's basically how I see my work touching lives of others. Yeah.
Great. So, what does innovation truly mean to you in the context of your career in both technology and leadership?
Okay. So innovation for me is, what is that one thing that you're doing uniquely, is basically innovation for me. Like, what does that one unique aspect of what you're doing is helping, if you're a leader, like through your leadership, if you're an engineer, like through your engineering, if you are like a PM, like through your product management. And that for me is innovation. So for anyone, find that one unique aspect of what you're doing in your job, and that for me is innovation. When done at a large level, it's a bigger innovation. But like, that is that one unique thing that you're doing. And yeah, it could be very small, so it's um it could be as simple as, like I said, like empathy based leadership. But if that is the one thing that you are basically distinguishing yourself on, I think that is the innovation that you're doing. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So finally, Priyanshu, for our listeners who wants to learn from your insights in engineering leadership, or maybe just generally want to contact you to ask some questions. So, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
LinkedIn would be the best way to connect with me. If you search Priyanshu Jha, I'm listed on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy. I believe in mentoring and coaching, so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Contact me through LinkedIn, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Wonderful, wonderful. Priyanshu, it's been a really great talk with you, and I am excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Iskel, for having me on your show. Yeah, that was a fun chat.